Yes, we are in our second week in the Gospel according to the Beatles. I have a friend in Albuquerque, New Mexico, who I think of as a Beatles expert. He's written some music books about the Beatles and can tell you anything pretty much that you'd like to know about the Beatles, probably the way Albert can. But my friend's name is Todd Lowry, and here's some of his words about this song, All You Need Is Love. He says, in early 1967, the Beatles were approached by the BBC to take part in the first ever live global television broadcast, right? A show planned for the summer called Our World. And they were asked to write a simple song that would be understood by different nationalities. And John Lennon responded to the challenge with All You Need Is Love. He said that he wanted to write something that had the timelessness of the song written by Pete Seeger that came to be the anthem for the American Civil Rights Movement, We Shall Overcome. And so starting in the late 1950s, that song did become the anthem. But this is how All You Need Is Love came to be. It wasn't about romantic love. It was about universal, spiritual love. It was about agape love, that love that comes from the heart of our Christ nature, our Godness, if you will. Todd says that the basic message of the Beatles' entire career turned out to be love. In the last song on their last album, that last song was called The End. On the very last album they recorded, which was Abbey Road, the last two lines of the last song on the last album were these: and in the end, the love you take is the love you make. Now the Beatles were about love. And of course Jesus was about love as well. In our Christian tradition, the Apostle John makes two proclamations about God. And just a word about God. If you're not comfortable with the word God, feel free to insert anything that resonates with you. Universal energy, love, Shakti, spirit, whatever makes sense for you. So the Apostle John makes two comments about God. Proclamations. First he says, he declares that God is light. And the second declaration he makes is that God is love. And because God is light and God is love, and we are told in Scripture that we are made in the image and likeness of God, guess what? Thank you. We are light and we are love. Right? Jerry Jampolsky, do you know who that is? He's somebody who was very active in the Course in Miracles, and he founded Centers for Attitudinal Healing. Don't you love that? Centers for Attitudinal Healing. And he wrote this: whatever the question, love is the answer. Whatever the problem, love is the answer. Whatever the illness, love is the answer. Whatever the pain, love is the answer. Whatever the fear, love is the answer. Love is always the answer, because love is all there is. Now, I can say with 100% certainty that everyone in this room has an understanding of love, has had an experience of love, has an understanding of love. We've given it, we've received it, we've understood it intellectually. But have we embodied it? Have we lived our life as if we were made in the image and likeness, as if we were light and love? Sometimes, sometimes not, yes? It's a story about a man named Jorge in a small town in Spain. And Jorge had a bitter argument with his son, Paco. And the next day when Jorge got up and went in to check on Paco, Paco was gone. He had run away from home. Overcome with remorse, Jorge searched his soul and realized that his son was more important than anything else. And wanting to start over, Jorge went to the most well-known shop in the middle of town. And in that shop, he put up a note that said, Paco, please forgive me. I love you. Meet me here tomorrow morning. So the next morning, Jorge went to the store where he found no less than 7 young boys named Paco, who had also run away from home. They were all answering the call for love. They were all hoping that it would be their father calling them home. Because truth is, love is the cornerstone of our life. It's the very foundation of our lives because it's what matters, right? If we don't feel love, if we don't love, if we don't give love and receive love, we aren't truly alive. Have you ever held back your love? You know what I mean, right? When you knew in that moment that you had a choice, that you could either open your heart, extend love, or you could close your heart and withhold your love. You had a choice to be loving, but for whatever reason you weren't, right? Maybe you were feeling vulnerable at that time. Or maybe you were afraid you'd be rejected. Or maybe you were just too darn angry to open your heart. But a question I have for you this morning is, what would happen if in those situations you opened your heart fully? What would happen if you dropped all of the story and always made the choice for love? If you lived from that holy place of love? Because the truth is, love is our natural state. We have to work at not being loving. James Redfield puts it beautifully. He says, when our intention is geared towards love, towards an open heart, when we trust that the deeper mystical part of us is always lying beneath the negative feelings, waiting for a chance to surface, the letting go becomes easier. It's almost as though, he says, we're getting out of our own way so that we can come back to this mystical state of love, the most natural way of being. So I invite us into this idea that no matter what it is that's going on in the outer world, that there's plenty going on. We can point to all sorts of situations where we think that there's no love, or it doesn't deserve love, or there's something else at work besides love. Let's step into the radical idea that all is needed in the world is our love, is your love. You are the center of love and healing in the world. Take a deep breath. When there's light in the soul, there's beauty in the person. When there's beauty in the person, there's harmony in the home. When there's harmony in the home, there's order in the nation. And when there's order in the nation, there's peace in the world. This is how it happens. It begins with us. It begins with us. So when we are thinking there is something else but love, when we are feeling something else but love, it has arisen out of our belief that there is a separation between us, that there's not only one of us. We have a mistaken belief that we're separate from one another. But the truth is, we are all the same at depth. We all want love. We all want to be loved. We all want there to be equality and justice in the world. We all come from that same place at the very depths of our being. And it's when we forget that, is that when we feel separate and we think there is something else at work other than love. So there's a spiritual practice to help us live as love. And it's simply this, acceptance. It's simply acceptance. When we are living as love, we accept people just as they are without wanting them to change. Right? That's the work that we are called to do as spiritual warriors. Right? That's the work we are called to do. Even when we don't think they deserve it or they haven't earned it, even when they're not being their best self, we are still called to love. We are still called to accept who they are and shine love. Now, whenever I talk about this concept, I always feel like I have to say, and if we are in an abusive relationship, that's different. We get away from that person, right? And then we do the work, God willing, Spirit willing, to do forgiveness work and acceptance work for them while we're far away, keeping ourselves safe. Okay, right? Understood? That's a good distinction to make. So, but everyone deserves love. No exceptions. No exceptions. We bless our kiddos every week, right? We sing to them every week. We love you, we bless you, we truly appreciate you, and we behold the Christ in you. Now, we don't know how those kids have behaved this last week. We don't know if they've cleaned their room or if they've done their homework or if they if they smacked their brother or sister. We have no idea. If they talk back to their parents, we have no idea. But that doesn't matter to us, because what we are loving and what we are blessing is their very nature, their very souls, the essence of who they are. We love them and bless them. We don't say, we love you and bless you and we appreciate you as long as you've behaved. Of course not. We don't say that, because we love them just the way they are. They are perfect just the way they are. It's a good concept, isn't it? So just as we love our children unconditionally, so are we called to love one another unconditionally. In John 13, Jesus said this, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you. This is how everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." And we do get a lot of opportunities to practice, don't we? We get a lot of opportunities to practice. Every day we are called to open our hearts in love. At the grocery store, in the parking lot, on our way home from work, at the parking lot out here, parking lot of Publix, on the highway. We get lots of opportunities to choose love in our lives. We get the opportunity to choose love for perfect strangers on the other side of the planet. So here's another idea. What would happen in your life if you didn't wait for someone to show you love and you showed them love first? Now, I'm not talking about the easy people. I'm not talking about the people that are easy to love, or the people that look like you or dress like you or believe like you. I'm talking about the people who get under our skin and the people who push our buttons. How would your life change if you loved first? If you opened your heart and took them into your heart? Gave them, my new favorite saying is, you gave them safe passage in your heart. How would your life change if you did that? I had a particular girlfriend for about 30 years. And about 10 or 12 years ago, we had a very big fight. I was absolutely sure that I was wronged. She was absolutely wrong, and I was absolutely right, and I was the victim here. And I was righteously angry at her. And I stopped speaking to her, and she stopped speaking to me. And so one day, after a while, I heard that she and her husband were divorcing. And I know what that's like. So she was in my mind. She kept coming up in my mind. And I wanted to pick up the phone and to call her. But I was afraid. I was afraid that if I picked up the phone, I think the best thing that would happen was that she would talk to me. Second best was that she would hang up on me without saying anything. And then I was afraid that she would begin to yell at me and then hang up at me. So I sat with that for a few days, but I couldn't let it go. I couldn't release the idea of wanting to reach out to her, so I did. I picked up the phone, and I made the phone call, and when she heard my voice, she started to cry. And she said things like, "I'm so glad you called. It's so good to hear your voice. I'm in such pain." And we got to speak to one another after, I think it was about a year. And it was an incredible healing, because I stepped through my fear, and I allowed my heart to open. And I won love, right? Imagine with me a scorecard, right? And on one side is love and light, and on the other side is darkness. And every time you act from a place of love, that's one for the light. And every time you act from a place of fear or resentment or hatred, that's a point for the dark side. Imagine, because I think that's what happens. When we open our heart and when we expand our love out into the world, even when it's so difficult, that's expanding light and love in the world. That's just how it happens. We raise the vibration in the world when we do that. Now, what would have happened, you might ask, if when I did call my girlfriend and she yelled at me and hung up? Would love still have won? Yes. Yes. Because I took the step. I took the step to be vulnerable. You know, it's Brene Brown, that's her. She flies that flag. We must be vulnerable in the world. Because when we are, and when we step out in love, love wins. Love wins. And the scorecard gets weighted with love and with light and with joy and with harmony. Sometimes, though, we think, I'm just going to speak for myself here for a second. Sometimes I think, I'll only close my heart for a minute, and it won't matter. I'm so mad right now. I'm so resentful right now, but I'm just going to close my heart for a minute, and it won't matter. But you know what? It matters, because every time I close my heart, every time you close your heart, that's one for the dark side. That's one for resentment. That's one for hatred. That's one for chaos. That's one for inequality and injustice. It matters every single time. And as I say this, as I teach this, as I learn it myself, I know that it's not easy. And yet, that's what we are called to do. If we are serious about this spiritual walk on the planet, that's what we are called to do. If we are serious spiritual warriors, that's what we are called to do. Mahatma Gandhi says this way, I believe in the essential unity of all that lives. Therefore, I believe that if one person gains spiritually, the whole world gains. And if one person falls, the whole world falls to that extent. Powerful. We're powerful right where we are. Our hearts are so powerful. I want to close with a story from the first Chicken Soup for the Soul book. A college professor had his sociology class go into depressed areas in Baltimore to get case histories of 200 young boys. They were asked to write an evaluation of each boy's future. In every case, the students came back very pessimistic. To a person, they each wrote that these boys have no chance, that they have no chance for a good life and for a stable life. 25 years later, another sociology professor came across the earlier study, and he had his students follow up on that first study to see what had happened to those boys. And with the exception of 20 boys who had either moved away, couldn't get in touch with them, or had died, the students learned that 176 of the 180 remaining had achieved more than ordinary success. Lawyers, doctors, businessmen, family men. And they were wondering what in the world had happened. So they went back to those boys and they asked them, what do you attribute this to? And each boy said to the researcher, there was a teacher. There was a teacher. That teacher happened to be alive. The researcher went back to the teacher and he said to her, what magic spell do you know that in this kind of environment, with everything that we have seen, why this many of these boys have gotten to be so successful? And she simply said, I loved them. I loved those boys. Powerful. Our hearts are powerful. Our love is powerful. It's up to us. It's up to us to do this in the world. One of the lines in our song was, there's nothing that you can do that can't be done. That seems a little paradoxical, doesn't it? There's nothing you can do that can't be done. Well, anything that anybody can do can be done. If you look at the person Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, anybody who shines their love, who radiates that love. If they can do it, guess what? So can you. So can we. There's nothing that you can do that can't be done. When we live love personally and globally, and love our intimate others, and then love the people who don't look like us, or the people who get under our skin, this is how the world changes. So this week, your assignment, should you choose to accept it, is to love big and love first. To love big and love first. And to remember that all you need is love. Wow. May it be true for each and every one of us.